In the shadows of American history, deep within the clattering wheels of the railroad, an eerie enigma weaves through the fabric of time, a mystery so chilling that it raises an unsettling question. Could this man from the train be America's first serial killer? The very thought sends shivers down the spine, doesn't it? As the train whistles cut through the silence of the night, they echo tales of a figure that vanished as swiftly as he appeared. Stay with me as we delve into a perplexing investigation that not only explores the history of a nation but also pierces through the veil of one of its darkest secrets. The mere idea that a singular man could have roamed the railroads, claiming countless lives with a blend of cunning and cruelty, is both enchanting and horrifying. Imagine a time when the railroad was the lifeblood of connectivity and progress, yet within its iron depths lurked a predator. Who was this man? What drove him to such heinous acts? And how did he manage to evade capture in an era that lacked the technological advancements of today? You might be wondering how we could link the quiet and idyllic scenes of small-town America with the brutal tales of murder. Through meticulous research and chilling accounts that span several decades, we're about to uncover a narrative that intertwines innocence with malevolence. Strap in as we pull the whistle on an extraordinary tale that lies just beyond the horizon of what we know. As we journey back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the railway system was not only about transportation, it was about connection and opportunity. Families were torn apart as individuals ventured into unknown territories, lured by the promise of prosperity. But amidst this wave of progress and adventure was an unseen threat lurking in the shadows. The man from the train became synonymous with dread, a specter haunting the heart of American life. Surprisingly, the details of his crimes were often numbed by the societal norms of the time. Innocent victims were snatched from their lives, leaving behind families shattered with grief and communities torn apart. Evidence has led researchers to believe that he was responsible for at least a dozen murders. In those early years, reports of his nefarious activities spread like wildfire, igniting fear that permeated even the most peaceful towns. What could compel someone to rise each day, knowing they would take another's life? As we peel back the layers, you'll discover something shocking. The man from the train was not just a remnant of folklore, but a gruesome reality with a macabre method. His choice of victims, women, children, and occasionally men, was arbitrary and defined more by circumstance than by a manic obsession. What compelled him was the thrill, the chase, and the ultimate power to control life and death. His presence disrupted the very essence of tranquility. A simple train whistle now signaled not just arrival but also potential demise. The chilling stories began accumulating, as local newspapers documented every sighting, every grisly discovery. In 1896, a series of unexplained murders in a small town in Pennsylvania caught the attention of not just local law enforcement, but of the public at large. The details were sparse but haunting. Families were massacred, sometimes within the safety of their homes, sometimes targeted as they waited near the tracks. In this initial wave of terror, one can see the groundwork of a serial killer at play, an insatiable hunger for chaos. Beneath the blanket of fear, investigative efforts were often disjointed at best. You may find it fascinating to consider how law enforcement in the late 1800s operated with limited resources and fragmented communication. Local sheriffs, who often recorded these atrocities, struggled to collaborate effectively across state lines. Each murder was treated as an isolated incident, failing to connect the dots that might have otherwise revealed a chilling pattern. Questions loom large. If only they had had access to the tools and technology we possess today, would this infamous figure have ever escaped their grasp? This brings us to the role of the media during those gruesome years. Newspapers sensationalized these crimes as they sought to captivate their readership, often embellishing details to enhance the horror. But did this publicity serve to bring the killer to justice, or did it further empower him? With each publication detailing his rampage, the man from the train grew bolder, more widely recognized, and his notoriety flourished. What can we learn from this disturbing dance between the media and crime, a relationship that, even today, remains a topic of fierce debate? One of the most cursory yet revealing anecdotes comes from an investigative series published in 1907, where a journalist painstakingly compiled accounts of more than 24 murders associated with the railway. These revelations brought forth a collective shudder, as communities realized they were not alone in their suffering. Yet, for every chilling revelation, one fact loomed larger than the fear: the mysterious man eluded law enforcement time and time again. Have you ever considered what it must have been like for those families, living under the shadow of an unknown killer, fearing the wailing of the trains that heralded not just journeys but dangers? Witnesses recalled how the sound of steam engines became synonymous with their nightmares. Such a psychological imprint reveals as much about his impact on the individuals as it does about the actual crimes he committed. The narrative stirs curiosity, doesn't it? How did he choose his victims? What might have been his psychological profile? Some researchers suggest he was a transient, a drifter taking advantage of vulnerable populations near the railways who lived in isolation. Each chosen victim became nothing more than an opportunity, the ultimate prize waiting to be claimed. The ripple effect of fear spread like a plague beyond the local towns. In larger cities, where anonymity was more easily achieved, the terror transformed into paranoia. Rumors circulated that any stranger might be the infamous killer, sowing distrust among neighbors. As the man from the train continued his gruesome conventions, ordinary life shifted into an era defined by suspicion. Families took extra precautions, lived with heightened awareness, and locked their doors at night, a simple yet radical change in their daily lives. Are you beginning to feel the weight of these stories? Each victim tells a tale of tragedy, and the legacy of fear extends far beyond dates and headlines. The unanswered questions linger like smoke in the air. Was he ever caught? Did he stop killing for a reason? As we examine these cold cases through the lens of modern psychology, could it be that the answer lies not just in his mind, but in the very society that allowed him to operate undetected? Each unsolved mystery cloaked the reality of those killed in the darkness of a society bending under pressure. The leading theories around his true identity suggest he might not just have been a lone wolf, but a representative of deeper societal issues. Could systemic failures have allowed such horror to fester? What does history reveal about the vulnerabilities we refuse to address? As we tread deeper into this investigation, we find echoes of his presence in older chilling populations, distant yet familiar. Some historians tie his actions to the broader themes of violence and upheaval that accompanied America's rapid industrialization. In the wake of societal evolution, the struggle of the individuals caught in the wake of progress invariably gives rise to monsters, those who awaken from displacement and despair to assert power through violence. Nonetheless, the ultimate question remains: did the man from the train truly embody the first traits of a serial killer, or was he merely a reflection of an era where such behaviors were just beginning to be understood? Are we on the verge of unveiling something unprecedented within American crime? With each uncovering of his tale, glimpses of potential psychological instability, compulsive behavior, and an insatiable thirst for chaos paint a portrait of dysfunctionality. I can't help but wonder, did he transcend into a series of copycats, a chilling legacy that transformed the face of criminality in America? The answers, as we'll see, may hold not only the key to the past but also insights for the future. As we reach this juncture in our story, it becomes crucial to environment a comprehensive understanding of how one man's sinister actions transformed into a broader narrative of fear and disillusionment, shaping public perception of crime in America thereafter. The tragic irony lies in the fact that the man's malevolent deeds birthed a legacy that, in some uncanny ways, persists today. Stay with me as we endeavor to peel back not just the curtain hiding the man from the train, but also to grasp the true impact of fear that lingers, as we continue our haunting exploration of one of America's most infamous shadows. As our exploration continues, we find ourselves at the crossroads of perception and reality, where societal fears intermingle with the shadows of the man from the train. His existence unmasked fears that resonated deeply with the American psyche. Within this harrowing tale lies an evolution of community awareness, efforts to protect the innocent, and an insatiable curiosity that fuels the lure of serial killers. While he remained shrouded in anonymity, the public was not quite powerless. The press, along with grassroots activism, began to stir a reaction, prompting calls for a better organized, more systematic law enforcement response. Families actively sought to reclaim their safety by forming neighborhood watch groups and pooling resources to create awareness about potential dangers lurking in the night. The very communities that were once plagued by anxiety took proactive steps to shield their loved ones from becoming the next victim of this unseen predator. Across America, the emergence of vigilantism became another reflection of a society desperate for control. With police often uncoordinated and dispersed, citizens banding together felt like a rebellion against this insidious threat. Some individuals even took matters into their own hands, with reports surfacing of locals setting traps or attempting citizen-led investigations to catch the man before he could strike again. The allure of justice became a rallying cry, and though some of these homemade measures were fraught with peril and misjudgments, they illustrated an underlying theme: the human spirit's relentless pursuit of safety. But who were the real victims here, beyond the bodies left cold in the wake of acts of horror? It is crucial that we honor the lives lost, giving them not just a name but a narrative. They were mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters, individuals with hopes and dreams, suddenly extinguished in an unthinkable act of cruelty. In many ways, this episode in history served as a precursor to how society addresses victimization. Documents show that the majority of those targeted were indeed vulnerable groups: travelers, those living on the margins, and those isolated from the protective embrace of community. The societal factors that allowed the man to flourish were starkly reflective of class disparities, economic oppression, and the pervasive loneliness that marked an age of rapid transformation. To grasp the full scope of his legacy, we must venture into the accounts of survivors and the families left behind. One haunting report discusses a young girl, a witness to a family massacre that would shape her nightmares for decades. Her experience, frequently revisited, led her to be an outspoken advocate for protective laws and child safety measures that would ripple through subsequent generations. The awakening of public consciousness and the growing distrust of strangers forced critical conversations about safety and accountability. Local law enforcement, faced with mounting pressure, began to realize that something extraordinary was occurring beyond the scope of typical criminal cases. The forensic practices of the day, although rudimentary, began to adopt new measures. Investigations slowly shifted from being viewed as singular events to broader assessments searching for common patterns. While actual breakthroughs often floundered, the endeavor itself marked a significant beginning toward what we consider modern criminal investigation. As stories of the man from the train became part of the warp and weft of Americana, they also sparked a new fascination. The rising popularity of crime novels and eventually pulp fiction began to weave tales that mirrored the fears of the public. It would not be long before fictionalized depictions of serial killers began appearing in mass media, engaging society's imagination. But this fascination with violence came at a cost, one often inherited by future generations. In the incessant quest to understand and dissect the anatomy of evil, we unwittingly romanticized certain aspects of it. This cultural fascination with the man from the train and others like him paved the way for morbid curiosity to become a dominant feature of media consumption. By the 1920s, the emergence of photojournalism captured remnants of the haunting narrative that occurred along the rails. Photographs became an intrinsic part of crime reporting, documenting both the events and their aftermath. The visceral nature of these images served to desensitize communities, morphing shock into a casual intrigue rather than a solemn respect for the lives that were lost. The man from the train transformed from a lurking threat into a character, the anti-hero whose tales might echo across generations, sparking the rise of a new genre, true crime. Returning to the man himself, we dive into speculation regarding identity. While many assumed he was a transient, some theories proposed that he could have been among the workers operating the railways, individuals who moved with the system for employment. This theory raises unsettling considerations. Had he indeed blended into society with an ordinary facade that allowed him to thrive among a transient workforce that grew alongside American expansion? Moreover, emerging psychological evaluations provide a better understanding of the potential motivations behind his monstrous inclinations. Some debate whether he exhibited signs of a compulsive killer, or perhaps revealed traits that aligned him with those who struggle with deep-seated trauma or substance abuse issues. The inability to capture him, or even identify him, sparked an academic curiosity that extended beyond the immediate horrors committed. How does one reconcile the seemingly mundane existence of a man who could at once embody the face of normalcy and the depths of depravity? As investigative techniques became intertwined with psychology, contemporary scholars often bring forth comparisons between the man from the train and later renowned serial killers. The velvety web of enigma surrounding his life echoes eerily from criminal cases that would alter understandings of criminality for decades to come. Such comparisons attempt to flesh out the rusting edges of a society whose understanding of mental aberrations was yet malleable and often dubious. A semblance of closure came only years later, as new developments in forensic science and criminal profiling methods were adopted. Yet, during an era where the enormity of the loss-haunted towns, rarely did individuals resonate with the truth of victims. Instead, the focus often fell on the so-called mastermind evading capture. In this exploration, we must view the legacy of the man from the train not solely as an isolated pathological figure, but rather as part of a larger dialogue about the essence of violence in society, how it propagates, morphs, and ultimately transforms people's lives. As communities cautiously learned about rolling trains that simultaneously ushered in progress and danger, the haunting stigmas of the past were woven not just into folklore but into the vigilant fabric of everyday life. As we reach the end of our investigation into this chilling tale, we are left with questions that echo through the corridors of time. Was this figure merely an aberration, an isolated personality subverting the norm? Or was he a reflection of deep-seated socio-political unrest, the metaphorical manifestation of a nation navigating its own demons? In seeking answers, we must be prepared to face collective truths about our past, acknowledging how fear can morph into a legacy that shapes not just laws but the very fabric of human connections and mistrust. The man from the train remains enigmatic, a ghost seen only in the flicker of memories, yet his presence still demands attention in how we think about crime, safety, and community resilience. Ultimately, his story serves as an unsettling reminder that lurking within the familiar can be the unknown, a truth that continues to haunt our modern landscapes, clad always in shadows yet begging to be understood. So as we step to the edge of this examination of fear and folklore, let us carry forward the lessons learned, ensuring that the past informs our futures, the specter of the man from the train gradually transforming into a guiding light for vigilance and awareness. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey into the shadows, as together we unearth not just the story of a man but the heart of a nation grappling with its own haunting history.